Shina Om Shanti 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 Sri Guru Pyo Namaha Harihi Om Tat Sat. So we had done the verse number 23rd, and there we're talking about the subtle body or the Sukshma Sarira. And what does it consist of? It has these 7 elements in it: Pancha Jnanendriya, Pancha Karmendriya, Pancha Prana, Manas, and Buddhi. The mind, intellect, plus these 5 sense organs, five organs of activity, the Karmendriyas, and Pancha Pranas. Pranas, in Upanishads sometimes refer to the Indriyas only, but here pranas refer to 5 aspects of the pranavayu, the vital forces, 5 aspects of the vital energies in us. And we have discussed that at length yesterday. Now, Sariram Saptadasavi Shukshmam Tal Lingam Uchyate. That Shukshma Sarira is also called the Linga Sarira. Why is it called Linga Sarira? In the commentary, in the Tippani, footnote is there, if you look at it. Linam Artham Banhim Gamayati Lingam iti Vitpatya Tarkikaihi Dhumo Lingam iti Uchyate. Yatra Yatra Dhumaha Tatra Tatra Banhi. Wherever you smoke, there must be fire. Why? Because that you have seen in the kitchen. I'm talking about olden days where they were not using electric gadgets or ovens or gas ovens. So obviously they're using raw wood, and therefore there would be some smoke. So they have seen that niyata sahacharya. They are all the time, there is a concomitance, a co-relationship between fire and smoke. So wherever you see smoke, that presupposes there is fire, even though you may not be able to see it. Some smoke is emerging out of a mountain, and therefore you are saying Bandhimana ayam parvataha dhumat, because there is smoke, there must be fire. That is explained here in the footnote. Linam artham. Artham is that object. Linam artham, what is that? Bandhim, gamayati iti. That particular thing which is not obvious to the eyes, gamayati iti, lingam iti vitpitya. What is indicated, which is otherwise hidden. Linga means chinha. Okay. Lingam iti vitpatya. By that etymological analysis, etymological explanation of the word lingam, tarkikehi dhuma lingam iti uchyate. Therefore, smoke is considered the linga or the hetu. Jnapaka lingam. That means what conveys the meaning. Tatha eva idam api shakshinaha. That Shakti Chaitanya which is there in us, Sakshad, Tadbhasyatvena, the Linga Sarira, there must be somebody as a result of which all this is happening. The subtle body is there, and subtle body has to presuppose there is some consciousness at the back of it. So, Sakya Bhasyatvena, Tad Gyapyakatvad. This Linga Sarira indicates there is a Sakshi Chaitanya, witness consciousness behind all this. Lingam iti uchyate. So if somebody asks you why this Sukshma Sarira is also called the Linga Sarira, now you know. Lingam because it indicates the presence of consciousness in all of us, and that is how we call this as Linga Sarira. That is how it is explained. Now we're going to move forward to the next verse. Now, Evam Sukshma Sariram Avidhaya. This is how, having explained what is the subtle body, Tat Abhimanitva Prayuktam Pragya Ishvayor Avastantaram Darsayati. You see, in our system of cosmology, in Vedanta, we always try to explain the microcosm and the macrocosm. Both these things are there, the micro and the macro. And then we try to explain a co-relationship which presupposes certain kind of an equivalence, putting them at the same pedestal at the level of pure consciousness. However, with upadhis or with names and forms, one is the jiva, the other one is the Brahman. One is the micro micro thing, which is vyasti. These are all separate, like atoms. And then there's another such example. When there is rainwater which is falling from the clouds and then they fall into the ocean, can you anymore isolate that particular droplet of water which fell into the ocean? No, you cannot. However, the droplet exists there. Similarly, all these jivas, all of us are there. And then at the supreme collective, that is the Ishvara. And then he is the samasti, he is the samasti abhimana. That is the samasti collective identification. That is Ishvara. He creates all of us. And then we are like small, tiny aspects of that, tiny parts of it. And that's how we are jivas. He will explain in a beautiful way in the verse number 24. Pragyas tatra abhimanina taijasatvam prapadyate hiranya garbhatamishas tayorvyasti samasthita. It's beautiful. What he's trying to say here is that look here, these are two aspects of it. Pragyaha tatra abhimanena. So there are this abhimana. Why is it that pragya? Yesterday we have had a discussion on it. Prakarshana agya and that pragya, that because it has that awareness. Both the ways. When we are in deep sleep, the jiva is called pragya. Prakarshana agya. It doesn't know anything. You say that I had a wonderful sleep and I don't know anything, but I had a wonderful experience. I had a delightful sleep. Now there is an indication. There's a beautiful thing. In the sleep state, in deep sleep, are you having an ice cream? Are you having your best friend with you? Are you having a very good car or a house or anything? Even if you have, are you able to experience them? No. What are you experiencing? You are experiencing some blissful sleep. You are experiencing bliss during that deep sleep. That makes it evident that for experience of ananda, you do not need anything external. You need something external or internal for experience of sukha. That is a kind of vritti. Some kind of a vritti is happening there. Vikshepatmaka vritti is happening there. But in deep sleep, there is a vritti, that is avidya vritti. I didn't know anything. So it's not abhava. We have explained that earlier. When you say, I do not know anything, is it a statement about your knowledge or about your ignorance? It's a statement about your knowledge of your ignorance. So it's a statement about your knowledge. So you are a knowing self. There is not absence of knowledge. There is knowledge of absence of specific knowledge. Pragya. Pragyaha tatra abhimanena. So in the deep sleep state, it's very interesting if you look at it. There is experience of ananda, and for ananda to be experienced, you need somebody to experience. That somebody to experience is that Shakhi Chaitanya, and it is experiencing that happiness through avidya vritti, and that is called jiva. Because that your consciousness reflected in avidya is what is jiva. That is why it's called pragya. Pragyaha, that sa jivaha pragyaha tatra abhimanena. Susupto, that avidya abhimanena. And then during the deep sleep, we know it's called pragya. What about the state during the state? Taija sattvam prapadyate. That pragya, which is there in the deep sleep, in the sukshma sarira, because we studied the sukshma sarira. The sukshma sarira is active during the dream state. In deep sleep, it's not active. Deep sleep, you're in the karana sarira, causal body. The subtle body is active during the dream state. Why? You see a lot of dreams. That explains why the sukshma sarira is called taijasa. Why so? Because it illuminates your experience of houses and cars and friends and horse races or cricket matches, or you are walking around in a beautiful garden in your dream, or you are having an argument with a friend of yours, or you're making a presentation in a conference, all happening in a dream. Is there any external light for you to be able to see so many things? No. Who is that light? You yourself. That consciousness which lights up during the dream state. Therefore, that self with that, that swapna upadhi, that swapna state, swapna avastha upadhi is called taijasa. Why? Because it is able to, its first thing is self-luminous. It doesn't require any external light. It's able to illuminate the whole dream that you have. Tejasatvam prapadyate. Prapadyate means prapnoti. That jiva is called Taijasa. Tejasatvam means it assumes the name called Taijasa. Now there is a girl in Vedanta, that beautiful example will come in some of the subsequent chapters. There is a girl, young, nice girl, and then one fine morning she gets married. And then she meets a professor. For the professor, she is a student. For her father, she is a daughter. For her brother, she is a sister. Her brother-in-law, she is a bhabi, sister-in-law. And for her husband, she is the darling, she is the wife. And for her little baby, she is the mother, a resuscitation. She feeds him. He's mad after her because he can live only when she feeds the baby. Baby is very small, less than 1 year. And then there is another lady who calls her as daughter. Some other lady calls her as daughter-in-law. One girl calls her Didi or sister. There's another girl who calls her sister-in-law, her husband's sister. Same person has so many identities. And they are attributing behavior, qualities, personalities from the perspective they have in the light of the relationship they are trying to establish with that girl. Somebody sees her as a student, so he's talking about her intellect. Somebody loves her as a daughter. Somebody loves her as daughter-in-law. But persons remains the same. Same Atma then is called Prajya in the Susupti Avastha. That is the Jiva. It assumes that Upadhi or the name is Tejasa, the way that girl assumes the Upadhi as a daughter-in-law or a Bahu or as a wife. She remains the daughter of her father, sister of her brother, sister of her younger sister. However, she becomes sister-in-law, wife, daughter-in-law in another family, in that new set of relationships she has assumed after marriage. Similarly, same Atma, the Jiva, assumes the name called Taijasa, that Tejasatvam prapadyate. And that same Jiva, when you take it to the collective level, Hiranya Garbhatam Ishaha. Ishaha is Ishvara. That Ishaha Hiranya Garbhatam prapadyate. It's called Hiranya Garbha. It's called Taijasa at the micro level. At the macro level, it's called Hiranya Garbha. Hiranya is gold, right? So where from you get the word Hiranya? It's called, Hitam Cha, Ramaniyam Cha. It is beneficial and it's very attractive. That's how it's Hiranya, it's gold. In a way, Hiranya Garbha, because this whole sansara is born out of Ishvara. So he's Hiranya Garbha. Why should this sansara be compared with gold? It's very attractive and it fulfills a lot of your needs. So all this is born out of the womb of Ishvara. Therefore, Bhagavan is called, Vishnu is called Vishwa Yoni, the mother of this whole universe, the causal factor behind this whole universe. Hiranya Garbha, Hiranya Garbhatam Ishaha Prapnoti. Okay? So that is how he's explaining Hiranya Garbhatam Ishaha. And then what is the difference? Why that same consciousness is called Jiva at the level of a micro level? Why is it called Ishvara at a collective level? He's saying Tayoho Vyashti Samastita. Vyasta, separate, There's so many things. They are at different locations with different qualities. We have already explained as to why all of us are different from each other, because it is that pure Atma Chaitanya or that Brahman is reflected in individual consciousness or individual minds of us, which is colored by our own previous experiences. And then with these previous experiences, in which that consciousness is reflected, we look like that. You have a light or a lamp. It has nothing to do with it. Or you have sunlight, right? And then you have a crystal, and that crystal is kept close to a blue flower. It looks blue. It's kept next to a red flower, red rose. It looks reddish. Some pink flower, it looks pink. The crystal has no color of its own. It only reflects whatever color comes close to it. Similarly, that pure consciousness is reflected in our individual minds, and therefore it appears as different human beings. That is Tejasa during Sukshmavastha. In the same Sukshmavastha, the subtle body, when it assumes that subtle body form, it's called Ishvara. You see the difference? So it's called Ishvara because you have to remember this, that this Ishvara is different from Suddha Brahma, which is Nirvikara, Nishkriya, Arupa. There's no name, no form. It assumes that subtle form. It's called Ishvara. And why is it called Ishvara? In the dream state, you see as Tejasa, you are also a creator. You dream so many things, isn't it? In the light of your vasanas, your sanskaras, and your desires. Similarly, Ishvara makes use of our papa punyas to create us. So it's our thoughts which is responsible for how the sansara materializes. It's all our thought processes together. The supercomputer called God processes it, and then it gives birth to a sansara. So that is called Hiranyagarbha. That means that Sukshma Sarira Abhimani at the collective level is called Hiranyagarbha. It is called Taijasa at the micro level or the Jiva level. Done. Now let's look at the commentary. Pragyaha Malina Sattva Pradhana Avidya Upadhika Jivaha. What is that Pragya? We have already explained that in the previous slokas. Malina Sattva Pradhana. Why is the word Malina? Because you have overload of Raga and Dvesha. Malina, Sattvika is there, but it's overload, kind of smothered by overwhelming presence of Raga and Dvesha, attraction and aversion. Malina Sattva Pradhana Avidya Upadhika. You have that ignorance or avidya. It's a bhava padartha. Please remember this. Avidya is not absence of knowledge. Avidya is a bhava padartha. Why? Because out of avidya, sansara is getting created. There has to be some easiness associated with it. Out of absence, you can't have anything. If there is some presence, you can modify it. If there's a paper, you can write a poem. If there's no paper, what do you write? There has to be something for something to materialize. So avidya is bhava padartha here. No vidya, avidya, no. That's not the way we go. Avidya is lack of proper understanding of what reality is. That is avidya. But that is a state of understanding. There is bhava padartha. So he's saying sattva pradhana avidya upadhika jivaha. That is what we are. Tatra tejaha savadavachya antakarana upalakshita linga sarire abhimanena. Tejaha sabdavachya. Because you see, with the help of chidabhasa, chidvat abhasate, because this pure consciousness, and we are like a mirror. It's like a sun, and that example will come later on. There's a dark classroom in which boys and girls are sitting, and there's a mischievous guy. So he says, "Sir, I want to go for a short pass." He gets out of the classroom. Then he has some mischief to do. He's carrying a small mirror, and then he focuses that mirror on the face of a girl sitting on the third row with whom he had a fight. These are kids. So he places it on her face. Then she cannot see the blackboard, or she blinks. Everybody laughs. And he has great fun. Of course, he will be punished later on, but he has great fun. Now, or he reflects that mirror image, that light on the wall. That particular light, that mirror light is what is our mind. The real light is actually the sun. So the Brahman is that sun. Then our minds are reflecting the light of that Atman, and that is what is Chidavasa, that is Antakarana. That he's saying, Chedaha Sabdavachya Antakarana Upalakshita Linga Sarire Abhimanena, with identification with the subtle body. Tadatmya Abhimanena. Abhimanena means Tadatmya. You have identification. I am this. Taija Sattvam. What is Taija Sattvam? Taijasa namakatvam prapadyate prapnoti. It is called Taijasa, Tejasatvam. It assumes the girl becomes a bride and then she becomes a wife. So it has that wifeness in her. Is there any change in her? No, she remains the same. It assumes a new quality or attribute. Wifeness comes into her. Daughterness in her continues to be there, but then there is a newness coming in, daughter-in-lawness. She becomes a bahu, daughter-in-law of somebody. Same way. Ishaha, what about that collective thing? Ishaha Vishuddha Sattva Pradhana Maya Upadhikaha. It's reflected in Maya. There's a lot of debate on it. How can that Maya is not a surface on which it can be reflected, so how does it reflect? There's a lot of discussion. Even Akasa is reflected in water. Akasa doesn't have a physical existence. How is it reflected? With the help of clouds and other things, you see blueness, isn't it? Similarly, these things are possible. And there's a lot of discussion, but right now I'm not getting into, because all these will come in subsequent chapters. All difficult issues of Vedanta will be explained with beautiful examples. Ishaha Vishuddha Sattva Pradhana Maya Upadikaha. With that Maya Upadhi, Paraparaha Tatra Sarire Aham Iti Abhimanena. Tatra Sarire means Tatra Shukshma Sarire Aham Iti Abhimanena. That Shuddha Brahma identifies with Maya. And with that Maya Upadhi says, I am this. The moment he says, I am this, he is already Ishvara, because he's having self-identification. Aham Abhimanena Hiranya Garvatam Hiranya Garva Sanjakatvam Prapadyate Iti Anusangaha. He assumes the name is Hiranya Garva. Another example. So you have the chief secretary, as I was saying, that education department has to undertake some activities under the new education policy of 2020, and then that particular education secretary is on leave, and the chief secretary says that, okay, I'm going to assume that. So he assumes, he takes upon himself and passes an order. He also becomes education secretary in charge. He passes an order to the education secretary to implement a certain thing. Then he again takes up the file and signs it off as the education secretary. At that moment, he becomes the education secretary. He assumes that name and form. Similarly, Suddha Brahman becomes Ishvara, and he is called Hiranyagarbha at the level of the Sukshma Sarira. It's called Taijasa. We're talking about Swapnavastha. And then why is he called Hiranyagarbha? How does he create? He's only doing Sankalpa. He doesn't have to work hard like a human being. Like a human being dreams a lot of things in the dream state. Similarly, Ishvara, with only Ikshana Matra, he just has to have a desire. It materializes. And he can create billions and billions of things. Same time, he creates the best human being and the worst human being. The best of the artists and the stupidest of the artists. He creates good and bad. Isn't it? He creates people who are completely different from each other at the same time. Processes so much of information, our papas and punyas and our orientations and aspirations. Therefore, he's that Ananta, Sarva Saktiman, Sarvagya, all these things are there. So he's called Taijasa Hiranyagarbha iti anusangaha prapadyante. Hiranyagarbha sanjakatvam prapadyate iti anusangaha. This is how he explained. Then he's explaining Taijasa Hiranyagarbhayor. You have now the micro and the macro. Taijasa is the jiva, individual, and Hiranyagarbha is the collective. Both are subtle bodies. Linga Sarira Abhimane Samane Sati Tayoho Paraswaram Veda Kathamasti. Somebody might ask this question. Both are subtle bodies. One is a macro level, the other one is a macro level. Then why are you having two different names? And what is the distinction? What is the filter which separates the jiva from the Ishvara? He's saying, look, King Nibandhanam Bhedaha King Nibandhana. What is the cause for this difference in the name and that difference in the attributes that you are talking about? Ityataha tayoriti. Tayoho taijasa hiranyagarbhayoho. So this sukshma jiva, who is called taijasa, and the collective jiva, who is called hiranyagarbha, sukshma, garbhayoho, vyastitvam samastitvam bhavati. At the level of vyasti, it's called Jiva, is Hiranyagarbha. At the level of Samasti, he is called Ishvara, is called Hiranyagarbha. Ataha eva Veda ityarthaha. Okay. Now, why this Hiranyagarbha word? There is another commentary where he writes this: Raja iva Hiranyagarbha sarva pranishu abhimanavan. It's like a king is there. He's sitting. Then he identifies with each citizen. The activities of all the citizens are attributed to him because he's doing everything, whatever is happening in his state. So, bhavati praja jivaha tasya upadhi abhimanavantaha bhavanti iti bhavaha. And then all the jivas, we are like the citizens in the kingdom of God. And we are obeying him. He directs us. But remember, it's the same complex, subtle body at the collective and at the individual level. In Vedanta, the truth is one, but then we make sense of it in different ways, depending on the level and how we are trying to deal with it. Okay? So this much we have done. Taijasa Hiranyagarbhayor linga sarira bhimane samane sati tayoho parasparam vedaha king nivandana ityataha tayoriti. So 24th is done. Let's go to the 25th verse. This is now we are going to discuss. Yesterday there was a question about the sthula sarira, the physical body also we have to have, isn't it? Can the linga sarira do any activities in samsara? No, the linga sarira is there so that we go to Swarga and we have some experience at the subtle levels of existence. However, on earth, to be able to, have you seen that beautiful movie which came in the 90s? It's called Ghost. And there's a guy who's in love with a girl and then he dies and he becomes a ghost. And it's a very funny movie. Nothing profound about it, but it's good to watch just for the heck of fun. This fellow is trying to move. He's trying to make his presence felt before his girlfriend. He cannot do anything because he's just spirit. Then he realizes that he doesn't have hands or legs to attack a guy who is trying to hurt his girlfriend. What it does is he realizes that he still has sankalpa shakti, and therefore he's using his sukshma power to do things. This is the imagination. But the beauty of it is, one thing they have got right is that the ghost has a sukshma sarira. He has a linga sarira. He doesn't have a sthula sarira. Only when you have a sthula sarira can you have an ice cream. Only when you have a sthula sarira can you have a child. Can you call somebody dad? Can you be dad of somebody? Isn't it? You need this physical being. Once you have abandoned this, you are no one's dad or mother. Of course, they might remember and give you shraddha and all the things. But the identities and relationships are all, anchored in this physical presence. Then we need to understand where from these bodies come and how. What do you mean by birth? Birth is nothing. It's a relationship between sukshma and sthula sarira sanyoga. And sthula sukshma sarira yoga means death. You connect with the physical body, that's called birth. You abandon the physical body, that's called death. So he's going to now explain this whole panchabhutas, how they materialize. Mahabhutas we discussed, right? So he's explaining. Ishwarasya samasti rupatve jivanam vyasti rupatve cha karanam aha. So why is it Ishwara and what is Jiva Rupa? That is dealing with the verse number 25th, and then we'll go to the Sthula Sarira. Samasti risa sarveshang swatmatadatmya vedanat tadabhava tato nitu katyante vyasti sangyaya samastihi ishaha sarveshang, because he identifies. He's the antaryami. So he's the, he's the person who is having all the powers and everything with him. Is Ishwara. So he will explain, he has these 6 big attributes as is mentioned in Bhagavatam and different other Puranas. We'll get into it. Samasti sarvesham swa atma tadatmya vedanat. Okay? So, how does that work out? How does that happen? He will explain. All that he's trying to say is that Ishaha Sarveshang Swa Atma Tadatmya Vedanat Samastihi. Why is it collective? Because he identifies Swa Atma Tadatmya Samvedanat. So he sort of identifies with everyone. Sarveshang, all the jivas. He's responsible for our good and bad. He helps us, he protects us. He's the Bharta, he's the Karta, right? He's also the Harta, he also. So he's saying, Anyetu Abhavad Vyasti Rupa iti kalpate. Vyasti Sangyaya. We don't have that identification with everybody. We don't have that identification. And therefore, we are the limited micro-level individuals. The best way to deal with would be, if you look at an Indian mother or Indian father, or even any father all over the world, but where you have a very strong family system. So if you look at a traditional Indian family, the mother generally would like to eat at the end of it after all the children. I mean, if it's a relatively, now families are all nuclear, but in large joint families in the 70s or the 80s, if you hear it from your grandfathers or your fathers or parents, so the mother or the father would identify with all, not only with his children, but also his brothers. It's still there in North India. So if you're the eldest brother and you have 2-3 younger brothers and they have children, even if you get a very good proposal for your daughter, you cannot marry her off if your elder brother's daughter, who is elder to your daughter, is not married. So you have to think about everyone. And he's the head of the family. He's not thinking about his own self. He's talking about each and everyone in that joint family. Same way now, Ishvara is thinking about this whole collective, all the individuals. Now, because we are not doing that, we are the jivas. Very simple. So, samastihi tihi. Ishaha Ishvara, who is he? Hiranyagarbha. Sarvesham linga sarira upadhikan. So, all these jivas have this linga sarira taijasa, right? Taijasanam sotadatmya Vedanat. He identifies with them. You have individual Taijasas. So you have Hiranyagarbha, then N1 to infinite. So you have all these individuals, right? At the subtle bodies, and they identify Swa Atmana Tadatmasya Ekasya Ekatvasya Vedanat Jnana Samastir Bhavati. It becomes collective because it identifies with the subtle bodies of all of us. End of the day, when there is pralaya, everything is dissolved. You know where we're going to stay? We're going to stay in that karana sarira. And then in the Ishvara, right? Everything gets destroyed. Not even Hiranyagarbha exists. The Ishvara creates Hiranyagarbha. That is the first Karya Brahma, first product. Then he's called Ishvara at that level. Then Hiranyagarbha is also one upadhi, but that is inferior to God, the Ishvara. And then all of us will be in that causal form, Karana Sarira. Then again, we will come back into existence when the creation starts again, based on our papas and punyas. Everything remains intact in an encrypted form. We are back in action. With any novelty? Yeah, very little novelty, but generally you will have the load of karmas from the previous births, and there's some kind of a calculation, and there's a package deal. That package is called prarabdha, and it starts, you encash it, then you have a body with some qualities, some attributes, right? Some strengths, some weaknesses, and you will suffer one life, or you will experience one life. Then with your punyas and papas, you abandon the body, you go, and you will come back again. That is repeated again and again. So he's saying, Tata Ishvara, Ishvarad Anye. Other than the Ishvara, what are we? Jivastu, Tad Abhavat. Because we don't have that identification with the whole collective. Tasya Tadatmya Vedanasya Abhavat. We do not have the consciousness of God who identifies with all. Therefore, we are jivas. Vyasti sangyaya, vyasti savdena kathyate. We are called vyasti. Okay, that is how. Now, what is this vyasti and samasti? Vyasta upadhi vishishto vyasti. Vyasta upadhi, all isolated. Therefore, we call vyasti. Samasta upadhi vishishtaha samasti iti avidiyate. Samasta, samasta is collective. That is called samasti. Okay, that is how we are sort of separated. Now, what is this Isha Shavada? How do you make? So, if you look at Bhagavan Aishwaryadi, so okay, now we'll go to the next one. Okay, so this is very simple. Samasti Ishaha Sarvesham Swatma Tadatmya Vedanat Tad Abhavat Tato Anye. One is Ishvara, and you don't have identification with all, and therefore you are a micro level individual. You are called Tajasa Ukathyate Vyasti Sangyaya. You are Vyasti and Ishvara is Samasti. That is a minor distinction. He has to drive home that point, because Tajasa is at the micro level and Hiranyagarbha is at the collective level. Both are referring to the subtle bodies at the micro and at the collective level. This much is done. After that, now we'll go to the Sarira creation, individual bodies that we have, and why do we have that? What is the need of it? Because without it, we will not be able to enjoy Sukha Dukkha. Therefore, he's saying, look at the introduction of the next verse. Next, if you say, Evam linga sariram tad upadhikau taijasya hiranyagarbhaucha darshayitva Sthula sariradi utpati siddhaye panchikaranam nirapaitum aha. Evam linga sariram. So you have the sukshma sarira, linga sariram. Tad upadhikau. And with that upadhi of the sukshma sarira, we have that consciousness become taijasa, and at a collective level, it's called hiranyagarbha. Taijasa and hiranyagarbha, two elements are there. It's already explained. Darshayitva. Sthula sariradi utpati siddhaye. But what about the sukshma sarira? What's going to happen to that without a physical form? What is the utility of that? No, it will not be very useful, because papa punya bhoga will not be there. So you need physical existence, and therefore you have to do, because we are human beings, we are there. Somebody has to explain where from we came and why we came, how we are being born and how we are managed, why we die. No, that's a very powerful theological question. In order to explain Utpati Siddhaye Panchikaranam Nirapaitum Aha, he brings in a particular concept in Vedanta called Panchikarana, the fivefold splitting and manifestation, how that happens. Let's look at this logo. It's very interesting. I have already mentioned. This is a explanatory device or tool which is used in Chandogya Upanishad. It's called Trivitikarana. Threefold differentiation happens there, because they leave Vayu and Akasha, which are Sukshma. They only take this Sthula Rupa. So Agni, Jala, and Prithvi, these are available to the eyes. Akasha and Vayu not available to the eyes. They are very subtle. So in Chandogya Upanishad, they are saying this whole sansara is created through a process of Tribhutikarana. And there will be a debate which one is true. Is Panchikarana true or is Tribhutikarana true? Both are true. These are stories. The most powerful message of the Vedantic insights is that the stories of creation are just stories. Don't take them too seriously. The purpose is that through these stories, you are supposed to remind yourselves that we can look beyond the stories to experience the ineffable joy that we'll get if we are established in truth, if we are established in the ultimate truth. I found some interesting research issues going on, and this research also includes people from physics, from psychology, and a lot of them, we should be otherwise very skeptical about these paranormal spiritual experiences. Some decades back, are now sort of turning around to recognize that this is all not being meaningless. So, there's a lot of studies on mystical experiences in the West. More so because in Christianity, this was much more powerfully present. It was there in Hinduism, in yogic literature that we have, in tantric literature we have, and also in Vedantic literature. These are all mentioned. But the insights which are there in the Vedantas are being in that Jivanmukti state where there is nothing, everything is Brahman, was earlier treated with a lot of skepticism. But now there is already a lot of well-read, well-trained professors in psychology, science are trying to get into it as to what is the state of pure consciousness. Is it a state of the brain, or there is something which is beyond the cognitive processes, which have the level of this, this whole biochemical framework called the body-mind complex in which we are operating, is something beyond that. They're looking at that. So coming back here, we are talking about how this body-mind complex takes place. Tadbhogaya punarbhogya bhogatayana janmani panchi karoti bhagavan pratyekam vyadadikam tadbhogaya. Now, there is a beautiful story in the Upanishads. All the jivas go to Prajapati. He said, give us something. We want to experience, right? So he creates animals in this and that. They are not happy. And finally, he has to create the human body, because that is a perfect platform for experiencing reality. Otherwise, this is all useless. Tadbhogaya. So you have created this tejasa. You have created this individual souls. So how do they experience reality? Tadbhogaya. Punar bhogya bhogayatana janavane. Tadbhogaya tasya bhogaya. For that tejasa, or for that even Ishvara at the highest level, for that to have an experience, you have to create something to be experienced. That is bhogya. Bhoga is possible. You need a bhokta and you need a bhogya. Isn't it? If there's an ice cream, you can have it. So you are having an ice cream. There is this process of taking the ice cream, and there is this ice cream. So you have this tripartite division. So bhogya, and then you need a physical framework through which this can be processed. It's like somebody gives you a floppy disk. Earlier, then came CD, and now you have pen drives. Okay, or now it's a soft file he sends you on your phone. It's encrypted, and it is a certain format. You need a program to be able to open that file, isn't it? Otherwise, can you open that file? No. So anything which is bhogya is whatever is object of experience. For that to be experienced, you need a framework. That is ayatanam, bhogayatanam sari. This body is the ayatana, that physical frame which makes experience possible. Bhogayatana janamane. For these two things to happen, panchi karoti bhagavan. Bhagavan is not now beginning to do panchikarana, to create this whole gross physical world. How does he do it? Pratyekam vyadadikam. Pratyekam. So you have this pancha mahabhutas. Mahabhutas, the moment I bring in the word maha, it's sukshma, mahabhuta. Then panchabhuta is what is physically available. So vyadadikam. So you have akasha, vayu, teja, and then rasha, and then you have prithvi, vayu, akasha. Now, how do they become physical fire? How do you have the physical sky, physical air? How does that happen? He will create one by one. How does that happen? This is explaining. Tadbhogayati. So he's saying, Bhagavan Aishwaryadi Guna Satka Sampannaha. Who is Bhagavan? It's like Guna, Gunavan, Mattu Pratyaya. The one who has attributes is Gunavan, isn't it? Dhanavan. You have Dhana, so you are called Dhana. Dhanamat, Sriman. You have beauty, Srimat, Sriman. Then the Matu becomes Vatu, Bhavan. So what is this Ishwara word? Bhagavan, that's why it's called Bhaga. Bhaga is Aishwarya. This Bhaga is of 6 types. What are these? First is that Bhaga is Aishwarya, then Virya, Yasa, Jnana, and Vairagya. These are the 6. Okay, in very brief terms, what is this Aishwarya? Bhaga, the first element in the Bhaga is Aishwarya. Aishwarya means Ishwarasya Bhava Aishwarya. So Ishitvam, that means he controls. He has that supremacy over all of us. That is the first quality he has. Sarveshang Jantunang Sasanam Yaha Karoti Sa. Right? Is the Ishwar, controls us. Okay, that is the meaning of the word first quality. Okay, first potential that he has. And then Vidyam. Vidya is, again, go to any American or anybody who is translating. Lingam means he will say phallus, Yoni means vagina, and the moment you say Virya means semen. No, none of this. Lingam is, as I mentioned, indicator. Yoni means cause, and Virya is power or Sakti. So here Virya means what? Yes, that power, Sarva Sakti Matvam. Omnipotent. That is what is Virya. In Sanskrit is a multi-significant language. What is significant? So if I say pen, the word pen is a sign. This is signified. Sign and signified. This is Vachaka, this is Vachya. This is Artha. This is Savada. Savada, Artha, Samandha. Vachya, Vachaka, Samandha. Sign and signified. So these will all come in linguistics, somebody who is interested in it. So Sanskrit is multi-significant, means for same word root, you can have 20 words created with 20 different meanings. And then all these, neo-imperial cultural theoreticians will like to misinterpret it to their benefit. They will do it any which way because they want to play. They know the rules and they play around the rules to give a twist to the meaning. So Virya is omnipotent. And then what is the Yasaha? You see, everyone worships them, right? So that is the Yasaha. Sarva loka prasiddha punya karmana kirtihi yaha. So sarvatra pratishtitah is sarva vyapaka vishu praveshane vasudeva is omnipotent, is omniscient, who is omnipresent. So Yasaha would also mean omnipresent. Is everyone. Everyone knows it. And then Shrihi. Shrihi is what? Sarva sampattivan. Whatever wealth we are talking about, it comes from him only. And therefore, this is beautiful prayer where I said, what do you want to do puja to God? What I want to give? Is there anything he has not given you? What are you giving him? It's all given by him to you. It's like you're trying to return what he has given you. But that's your gratefulness to the Lord, that you have given everything, and I'm just trying to show. You shouldn't feel very small or mean when you are reconnecting with your source. And that's a beautiful prayer. It's a beautiful Hindi prayer. I'm not being able to remember the lines, but it's a beautiful thing. What do I give you? And then Jnanam is Sarvagya, right? So the Sarvagyatvam is established by this word Jnanam, and then finally Vairagya. Why is it? Does he need moksha? Why should the Supreme Lord have Vairagya? What does it mean here? Why is it a necessary aspect of his being Ishvara or Bhagavan? He has to have Vairagya. You know why? Otherwise, he'll be trapped in samsara if he doesn't have Vairagya. Bhagavan explains in Bhagavad Gita, what it says? Is all the time Udasina Vadasina. Is completely disinterested. Is like having that stoic presence happening because of our karmas, and he gives us benefits, rewards, and punishments. But he's not trapped in anything. He's not attached to anything. Everything is happening through him. It's like the sun gives light, good and bad things happen. We cannot hold the sun responsible for anything. And yet he enables a good play, a school is running, some crime is happening, trains are running, you have aircraft flying, all these are happening under the witness of the sun. Sun isn't doing anything. Similar, the God is making everything happen without doing anything. That Vairagya word is essentially showing the non-attachment aspect of the Supreme Divine in whatever is being enacted here. It's a very complex reality. It's not so simplistic. Therefore, he's saying Bhagavan Aishwaryadi Guna Satka Samparnaha. He is the Bhagavan. Parameshwaraha. Therefore, we call him Parameshwaraha. Punaha Punarapi Tadbhogaya. What do you mean by Tadbhogaya? Tesham Jivanam Bhogaya Eva. You have created Jiva. You marry. You fall in love with a girl or you fall in love with a boy. Then you decide you want to live together. If in India, earlier marriage was necessary, but these days now you have, at least in cities, and even B-class cities, now you have a lot of stories about live-in partnerships. You live together, okay, now there's a child. Who's going to take care of the child? You have to be accountable. Lord is accountable, therefore, tesang jivanang bhogaya eva bhogya bhogayatana dharmane bhogyasya annapanade. What is bhogya annapanadi? You need some food, you need water, you need light, you need dress and house and this and that. Anyapanade. And what is bhogayatana? Bhogayatanasya jarayujadi. You have jarayuja, sweda, udvija, andaja. 4 kinds of beings are there. Udvija is the plant kingdom. Andaja is the bird, And then you have the jarayuja is the mammal kingdom, mammalians. And then you have andaja, born out of the eggs. Jarayuja are the insects. Jarayuja. So jarayujadi chaturvida sarira jatasya. We have these 4 kinds of bodies that we have. Janamane utpataye, in order to create. Vyadadikam akasadi bhuta panchakam. You have vyadis akasha, vyadadi akasadi bhuta panchakam. 5 panchabhutas pratyekam ekam panchikaroti. One by one he creates. What do you mean by panchikaroti? Apanchatmakam panchatmakam sampadyamanam karoti. Which is their akasa is akasha. But after panchikarana, it will be 50% akasha, 12.5% vayu, 12.5% agni, 12.5% jala, and 12.5% prithvi. That is the explanation in this Vedic literature. Okay? Sampadyamanam karoti. Now let's go to the next verse now. This is, I had mentioned, right? Vyasto upadi vishishto vyashtihi samasto upadi vishishtaha samastihi iti avidiyate. Then, there's one beautiful thing here. Mule swam padam suddham vyavartayati. You look at this, he's saying at the top here in the earlier thing, swa atma tadatmya vedanat. Swa means that you are talking about the Hiranyagarbha. Swa, what is there? To distinguish it from the Suddha Brahma, where there is no this ahankara bhava, absolutely beyond that. So what is this panchikarana? Now we are coming. We have, we are sort of time. I have a class, another. Okay, we'll just quickly do this verse number 27. Katham ekakasya panchatmakatvam ityatah aha. So 27th verse. Vidha vidhaya chekekam chaturdha prathamam punaha swasvetara dvitiyangshair yojanat panchate. Vidha vidhaya, it splits akasa, it makes 50%, 50%. Cha ekakam chaturdha prathamam punaha. First, he will make akasa 50%. Okay, I'll keep it in one box. Another 50% akasa will make 12.5%, and he'll put them in 4 boxes. Then he will take vayu 50%. He'll keep, and then you know what? He'll keep akasa 50% akasa, then 12.5% of the other 4 bhutas, panchabhutas. He'll split here. That becomes panchikrita akasha. Similarly, panchikrita vayu. Similarly, panchikrita agni and panchikrita Rasha or Jala, and Panchakrita Prithvi. Is it clear? So you have 50%, half. So there are 5 boys. Everybody has 10 fruits. One guy has got 10 apples. So, okay, you keep 5 apples of your own, and then you give 1 apple each to your 4 friends. The second has oranges. You keep 5 oranges with you and give 1 orange each to the other 4 guys. Similarly, everybody distributes it like that. Okay, so they distribute it like that. And when they distribute it, end of the day, everybody has 50% of his own fruits, and he has 12.5% of others' fruits. And that is how together. In case, instead of making 10 fruits, if I make it 8, that will become easier. Everybody has 8 fruits, 4 fruits of his own, and 4 all other friends will give him 1. That is how he has 4 oranges and 1 apple, 1 guava, 1 pineapple, 1 coconut, like that. So all of them have. These are Panchakrita. So if you say Panchakrita coconut means 4 coconuts and 1 orange, 1 apple, 1 banana, things like that. Similarly, whatever you are saying, Panchakrita Akasa means 50% Akasa. Panchakrita Jala means 50% Jala. And then you have 12.5% of other Bhutas. This is how it is done. And we'll look at it next week when we start, because exactly after this, I have 1 more class. So we'll do this Antimantras. Any questions, please feel free to put it in the group, and I'll get back on it next Saturday when we meet. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hare Om Tat Sat.